Good afternoon. It's Jeffrey Christian of CPM Group. It's about 8 minutes after 12 noon here in New York on Thursday, the 3rd of July. We're recording this today because we will take the 4th of July off. Talk a little bit about that at the end of this presentation. But first, let's review the precious metals markets. Gold, the active August contract is trading around $3,345 an ounce as we were preparing this. That's off about $14 from yesterday. The price has been testing $3,380 to see if it can break above that with a target of 3,400, a nearby target of 3,400, and probably higher price targets beyond 3,400. Our expectation is that the market will continue to test that on the upside. There is downside. The downside may be relatively limited to around $3,200, but over the next couple months, the idea of the gold price softening a little bit during the summer months in Europe and the United States, coming down as low as 3,000 or even 2,900 is not out of the question. We have seen those prices. Those were previous record prices that we saw as recently as April and March and April. We could see that, but basically we're looking at the price trading between $3,200 and $3,500 over the next month or so, going into the August contract and then into September. And our expectation is that beyond that period of time, we probably will see higher prices still because of the economic and political environment that we see as being hostile for real economic growth and likely to turn more hostile as 2025 proceeds beyond August and into 2026. We're looking at similar price action for silver. The July contract in the silver market is around $36.40 right now. That's off about 2 cents from yesterday's close, but it's up about 23 cents from where it was on Tuesday. September, which is the actively traded contract, was still trading at $36.91 a little while ago. That was up 18.3 cents. So you're seeing more interest in people trading the September contract rather than the July contract because it's the active one. July open interest is now down to 7.8 million ounces, and September open interest is up to about 657 million ounces. So September is where it is. As I said, our expectation is that there is scope for some softness. If the silver price holds above $34 over the next several weeks, that would be extremely positive for the market. There is a possibility that it comes back down to 32 or even 30 or even lower. Anything is possible. And we did see a spike down in early April when the U.S. administration started threatening very high tariffs, punitive tariffs, and a trade war, which would be extremely destructive of economic growth, and it's there. Platinum prices have risen very sharply. They've gotten over $1,400 yesterday and today. Today's high was $1,440, $1,439. As we were preparing this, the price had come off. The prices of all the precious metals came off after the U.S. employment figures came out more stronger than had been expected and stronger than the previous month, which reduced some expectations of the scope for lower interest rates sooner because the economy is, in fact, stronger than some people had anticipated it would be. So the October contract has come off. It's off $53, around $1,380 as we were preparing this video. You can see from the chart on the right-hand side, we haven't seen prices this high really since 2014. Prices almost got this high in early 2021 as the economies of the world came roaring out of the post-COVID lockdown. But then prices came off and were trading between 800 and 1100 until June. And again, it's very important to understand because people keep talking about how strong platinum prices have been in the first half of this year. Platinum prices have been strong in June, specifically the second half of June. And it's in the previous 5 months of the year, platinum prices were continuing to trade in that range that they've been in really for a decade or longer, since 2015, 2016. Prices spiked up in June. Our expectation is that the price will come off over the next few weeks, whether it comes down to $1,200 or if it goes back below $1,200 to maybe $1,100. We'll see. And palladium prices have also risen. They haven't been as dynamically higher as have platinum prices over June, but they have risen. They got up to $1,141 today. That's actually off $26 from where they were yesterday. And again, our expectation is that the prices will continue to trade in the range that they've been trading in really for about almost a year and a half to 1 3/4 years right now. I want to close talking a little bit about economic and political bedrock and a little bit of a tribute to the 4th of July. Every year since the 1970s at least, I have read the Declaration of Independence on the 4th of July, and I highly recommend it as something to do and to reflect on. It's very interesting because many of the complaints that the colonies had against King George, we have complaints against Washington right now. Now, some people have complained that CPM Group discusses political developments as if they were not important or even central to precious metals and other commodity markets. Other people have reacted to those comments saying, are you insane to think that politics aren't central to precious metals prices and markets? They are. Precious metals are integrally related to the political and economic environment. Some people confuse and cannot distinguish political discourse from partisan politics. I spoke a little bit about this earlier in the week. It's a core problem in the U.S. democracy. But, it's been a core problem in democracies throughout history. The master's thesis that I was going to write, I still have the notes, I never wrote it, had to do with federal tyranny in democracies. And that was in the mid-1970s, in the post-Vietnam War era. And it was an issue that I thought was very important to the United States political system and government at the time, because there were a lot of people who thought that the federal tyranny that we had seen in some instances in the 50s and 60s and early 70s was somehow an aberration to democracies. But the reality is that democracies have always had federal tyranny as a factor in there. And a core problem in our democracy is that people don't understand the history and the politics. We don't have civics classes anymore. People don't read the Declaration of Independence. They used to have to memorize it in grade school in the 1950s and early 1960s. So it's sad that there's this political discourse that is not well informed. But again, there are entities within the U.S. economy that have been saying we cannot afford an educated electorate since the 1950s. Now, some things are knowable, or as you could phrase it, we hold these truths to be self-evident. I want to talk a little bit about some reading. As I said, I read the Declaration of Independence every year on the 4th of July. In my Kindle and on my memory stick, I have the Declaration of Independence, the U.S. Constitution, and the French Rights of Man. If you really want to see something interesting, don't just read the U.S. Declaration of Independence. Read and compare it to the Rights of Man. It tells you a tremendous amount of insights about the differences between French attitudes toward politics, governments, and society in the late 18th century, and U.S. colonial attitudes, and to some extent British attitudes too. I also have in my Kindle The Wealth of Nations, Capital, Das Kapital, and The Theory of the Leisure Class. 3 bedrock economic books, combined total more than 2,000 pages. So it's a tough slog. I've read them all a couple times, starting in high school, and they really are incredibly important to understand. I will make one little side note. Intellectually facile viewers will note that Karl Marx named his masterwork Capital. He didn't name it communism. He was doing a SWOT analysis. What are the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats to capitalism? People don't understand that. Another side note, Norman Mailer wrote a fabulous book in the late 1960s called The Armies of the Night. And in it, one of the things that he said, almost as an aside, was that the U.S. government didn't understand global politics and didn't understand people's attitudes toward governance, that they didn't understand communism, they didn't understand socialism. And he said, and he put a finger on part of the problem. U.S. political leaders and U.S. military leaders never read the communist tracts. They didn't read Capital. They read people's discussions about capital, Classics Illustrated, Das Kapital, things like that. And when we got at the end of World War II, and you had a political vacuum in Central Europe, and there were communists and there were socialists, there were social democrats, there were Christian Democrats, there were conservative groups. The OSS and then later the CIA wanted to assassinate a lot of the socialists and social democrats. And calmer heads, more intelligent heads, more insightful heads said, no, these are the alternatives to communism in the eyes of Europeans. You kill those people off, and there's a total vacuum as to what a European would consider a legitimate alternative to communism. It's funny because 80 years later, we still have people in government who don't understand that. And you have people who throw around the word communism as if it's a cartoon caricature and don't understand it. It's just amazing how poorly informed our political system is. And again, starting after World War II and through the 50s, you had a core group of people who are still, their descendants are still in power and still have enormous influence in the U.S. political system and the U.S. military, who really don't understand global politics, global societies, and global economics. Other things I have on my stick and on my Kindle are the Port Huron Statement from the Students for the Democratic Society in 1962 and the Unabomber's Manifesto. The Port Huron Statement, and I have the original unabridged draft of it, is extremely intelligent and extremely informative. A lot of people, again, never read it, don't know what the Students for Democratic Society were all about. They were a bunch of crazy kids. They were anti-war. They were hippies or proto-hippies. It's like 26,000 words. And Wikipedia says it was a non-ideological call for participatory democracy. And that's what it was. And they went through a litany of issues facing American economics, politics, and society in 1962. And if you really want to be patriotic and you really want to be outraged by where our country is today, this 4th of July, don't just read the Declaration of Independence, read the Port Huron Statement. It's available in its unabridged draft form and in its final form online for free. And you'll see that, 200 plus years ago, we had a number of problems that we were complaining about that we found intolerable from the government that ruled us. And some of those problems are back. Some of them never went away. Some of them ebbed and flowed. But we're sort of where we were when we wrote the Declaration of Independence. And, I mean, Port Huron statement was 1962. It's really depressing the extent to which the problems that college kids understood 60 years ago, 63 years ago, are still here and still haven't been faced by our government or our other leaders in society. So a little bit of political stuff, good economic reading, good political reading. We're going to take off for the 4th of July, and we'll talk to you next week. In the meantime, you can go to our website. You can order our gold or silver yearbooks. They came out in March and May. You can pre-order our platinum metals yearbook, which will come out at the end of July. We're working on that now. You can buy other research that we've done. There's a lot of free reads and videos there. And you can send us a note at info@cpmgroup.com if you want to find ways that we can help you better manage your price exposure to precious metals and commodities. Take care of yourself. Take care of those around you. Try to do something good for the world. Enjoy the 4th of July. Reflect about what it really means. Think about how those guys actually, the Declaration of Independence was actually completed like 1 or 2 days before the 4th of July, but they dated it the 4th of July to give themselves time to get out of Philadelphia before it became public that they had declared independence. And it also came at a time when there were still a lot of people who said, well, maybe we can make peace with the British, until they found out that the British had sent a massive armada of troops that had landed in Staten Island to prepare to crush the colonial rebellion. And in that contingency of troops, there was one political envoy, but he had been charged by the British government that he may not negotiate with the colonial rebels. He can only accept their surrender. Kind of interesting sidetrack. There's a great book called Declaration, which talks about the maybe 90 days leading up to the Declaration of Independence and how it went down. That's all I have for now. Take care of yourself. We'll talk to you next week.